Hey, my sugar bears, welcome back to my channel, Bougie AF. It's your host, Jay Nicole. It's where I say stay bougie on them. It's me feeding you feminism for the soul. It's my soul food offering. It's where I apply pressure to issues by being critical and logical. Now, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now, let's get to the commentary, where I can guarantee you I will be doing too much, because that's just me. And like Sheree said, who's gonna check me, boo? Welcome back, y'all. You are tuned in to the Bougie AF channel. It's your girl, Jay Nicole, where I say stay bougie on them, and I'm serving you feminism for the soul. Don't forget to check me out on them people's Instagram at OG_BougieAF. Also on them people's Twitter at I'm_Bougie_AF. You can also check me out on TikTok at SheBougieAF. So let's get into it. So I'm going to try to get in the topic as fast as possible, because I do think this is going to be a long one, as much as I don't want it to be. So how do I break this down? I recently have been on Clubhouse, and, well, no, y'all always know I stay on Clubhouse. That's where I'm at, right? So a lot of times on Clubhouse, with people who have picked a side in terms of the next coming election, right, 2024. And one of the talking points, and we hear our president and people who support our president and stuff like that, is that we are right now, because I wrote notes, currently at a 3.5% unemployment rate, right? The lowest it has ever been historically. The lowest, the average has been around 5.72%, right? That's the lowest average, historically. But right now, we're at a 3.5. And, Joe Biden was definitely... he can take credit for this, I guess he wants to, and he's using it going into 2024. And it's something that for me, I call bullshit, right? I think, a lot of times when I've heard certain goats and bullshit on Clubhouse use this line to try to say that overall our economy is healthy, right? Overall, we're doing the best that we have ever been doing, and blah, 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 all of these things, right? And for me, it's like a smoke and mirrors type of situation. And I think if you don't know where to go look, or if you're not really critically thinking about yes, it's at 3.5, right? But I am someone who proudly is part of the Black community, and I am aware of how we're surviving. How about that, right? And with being aware of how we're surviving, I know hearing, that the unemployment rate's at its lowest of 3.5, I know it just doesn't tell the whole story about what that survival entails, right? What's going into that, right? I also know that, like I said, I also know that it just does not tell the entire story, and that it is so more complex than just, we have low unemployment rates, and that means everyone's at work, everyone is prospering, everyone is getting ahead, we have this viable economy. It does not say that, right? It does not indicate that for me, right? It doesn't indicate it in terms of what I know to be true about a community that I come from, right? And I think sometimes when certain people obtain certain wealth, or, I think they kind of lose track, or maybe they want to forget where they came from, or how the people they're related to. And I'm not making an assumption here. As a Black American and certain individuals, I just know that we're not coming from two lines of families where everybody is prospering, right? Folks still got niggas in the projects, right? I still got family there. I still got people who I know are struggling, right? And I say that to say that when I have certain conclusions to certain thoughts, I'm always remembering that, right? And so when I run across certain individuals who tend to speak as if though they are forgetting where they come from, and then people's Wilmington, Delaware and shit like that, or Baltimore or something like that, or you're forgetting that, what that survival entails and how people are surviving. I know I'm talking to out of touch, and just bullshitters, right? I know they ignore the fuck out of you, to be completely honest with you, right? But you could tell me about Philly Sweetly all motherfucking day long, but I know what you can't tell me about, and that's the Black community, right? So I decided that I wanted to do this video so that way I could kind of break that down on why I'm so strong on feeling as if though I'm not impressed by you just telling me that there's a low unemployment rate. As I said, and to individuals or typed in the chat on Clubhouse, is that as a Black American, that rate tells me nothing, because it could just possibly mean also people ran out of unemployment insurances to claim, right? It does not take in the fact of the people who are surviving and living off of Social Security and disability. It doesn't tell me about the people who may be working, but they're still, because of the wage gap is what it is in the United States, they're barely surviving, right? It doesn't tell me about the fact that people could be working and still need subsidies, some type of SNAP benefits, Section 8, all these things to survive, right? All of these things to survive. So when I hear people just say 3.5 and they use that as something to be proud about, I sit back and say, baby, baby, right? Because, I live in Boston, Massachusetts. It's probably one of the most expensive cities to live in, right? Up there with San Francisco, right? Up there with, what else? New York City, Seattle. It's really up there, right? You can't even work for the city of Boston, okay, and survive without some subsidies, right? I know niggas who are working for the city and working for the state still needing subsidies to survive. Still living in projects, still needing Section 8, rent, still high for them though, but they still need these things to survive, to live here, right? So me being impressed by hearing about 3.5%, I'm just not, right? So I wanted to do this video because actually I was in a room the other day and they were just talking about, are people overreacting? Are we overreacting about the state of where America is in terms of the economy and this, the overall health of our communities, right? Are we being extra, right? It's not that bad, so worse somewhere else. And I don't give a fuck about somewhere else. I'm here. I pay taxes, and my overall goal is to make sure that we are participating in our civic duties and the process of electing and getting it right to make it better for people here, right? Not comparing it to third world countries or anything else like that. If I want to compare it to somewhere, I'll compare it to Sweden, somewhere, you know what I mean? I'll compare it with, people are actually really thriving and healthy and happy and all this stuff. I'm going to compare it to that, right? Because that's what we should be compared it to if we're going to say that we are the greatest country in the world, right? So I thought about, are we being too fearful? Like, are we overreacting? And what does that look like? And I wanted to do this video to answer some of those questions, right? Because, like, what's really going on in America? Now, if you've ever heard me in some of these clubhouse rooms, I am always in bringing up a channel that I go to in terms of Nick Johnson. And so what we're going to do, we're going to actually look at one of his videos. And I love his videos because I know my folks on Clubhouse, they're really big on stats and, statistics and books that people read or wrote and stuff like that. So I want to show you my way of also learning, right? That is still based on stats and real life, real time information, right? Because when we're talking about people overreacting, I tend to think that sometimes people come to certain conclusions because they may be in like major cities and stuff like that, and they're not really kind of exposed. A lot of times it'd be like West Indian people though too. And for me, I kind of am aware of like where West Indian people kind of reside in America. And a lot of times it's really close to big major cities and stuff like that, right? It's usually not in rural Ohio or rural Pennsylvania a lot of time, right? You're not going to find a lot of, in my city, we have a huge Cape Verdean population, right? I ain't gonna find that same huge Cape Verdean population in rural Michigan, right? I'm just not. Or in Gary, Indiana, it just does not exist, right? So with that being said, sometimes when I hear certain specific views, I am interested in knowing people's backgrounds. Because again, if you're second generation here, you ain't got enough foot in soil to really kind of understand or know what's like really going on across this country, right? And one of the other things I did was in talking about the unemployment rate, I want to them people's trust it, because society is moving there. I ain't got no shame about using it. I want to trust it chat GPT. And the question I wrote two questions. The first question was, is the unemployment rate a great indicator of the economical health of the United States? They wrote here. I'm not going to read all of this because I'm going to read the summary paragraph, but then they broke it down into different things, right? Headings. It says here, unemployment is indeed an important indicator of the economic health of the United States and any other country. It provides insights into the overall condition of the labor markets and can reflect the broader state of the economy. However, it's not the only indicator, and economists and policymakers typically consider a range of economic indicators to assess the health of an economy comprehensively. Here's why unemployment is significant and how it fits into the larger picture. And then it breaks down the labor market health, it breaks down consumer spending, it breaks down income levels, it breaks down government revenue and social programs, it breaks down the confidence and sentiment, it breaks down the monetary policy considerations, social well being and impact. And I said, cool, 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 cool. Then the last summary program after the breakdown, because all those things are correct. Please take your time and go back and read that. All those things are good. But then it says here, while unemployment is a crucial economic indicator, it should be considered alongside other indicators such as gross domestic product, growth, inflation, income equality, industrial production, trade balances, and more. These indicators collectively provide a more comprehensive view of the overall health and performance of an economy. Now, that's what my problem was in terms of people always touting or talking about this, rate of 3.5, right? I know it's not the comprehensive view of a lot of different things, right? The most important thing to me that stands out in terms of like what you're going to see in, when we look at Nick Johnson's video, is that he does a lot of talking about the trades, right? In terms of whole entire communities that have disappeared across the United States because of not having certain trades and factories and stuff to support economy in certain areas, right? Where people would want to live, and because there's jobs and stuff like that. When the jobs go, people go, right? So some of that has really collapsed in a lot of these cities and towns, right? That's extremely important. And then the other one that was extremely important to me was income inequality, because I know that's where my people really show up in terms of the wage gap that is happening in the United States. Okay, I knew what it broke down was good, but that didn't speak fully, to what I wanted to speak to. And then I said another question I wrote. Looking at income inequality is a low unemployment rate an indicator or sufficiently assesses the state of the disenfranchised minority communities? Does it accurately factor in the households that operate at poverty levels and the need for subsidies to help families survive? Okay, so ChatGPT said, you raise valid points. I know, I do. But thank you, boo. So ChatGPT said, you raise valid points. While a low unemployment rate can be an indicator of overall economic health, it does not necessarily provide a complete picture of the well-being of all segments of the population. Pay attention, girl. Pay attention. Of the population, especially disenfranchised minority communities. Here's why. It then says here, income inequality. A low employment rate might coexist with significant income inequalities. While more people are employed, the quality of those jobs, wage levels, and access to opportunities can vary widely. Now, I say this because when I was on Clubhouse and I was, having a little back and forth in terms of being in the chat and saying, well, that don't really speak to, what I know in terms of like what people need to do and have to survive, and having a job. A lot of times it's not just the only thing that people need. They usually have to survive off of needing subsidies and stuff, right? That's where this comes from, right? So whereas, y'all want to discredit me and act like I don't know what I be talking about because I ain't read the same books as you. I don't know where you guys got this from. This is really, really weird. But I'll show you better than I can tell you. I promise you that. Because I've always told y'all, anything I say, I can prove it. I literally can. It's just crazy. And then says minority communities might still face disparities in terms of income, advancement opportunities, and access to quality education and healthcare. Oh, gold star to Jackie Nicole, because I'm always talking about the education. I'm always talking about how it's an indicator. Okay, all right. To community health. It is a great indicator. I literally, because of Nick Johnson, know exactly when he goes to certain cities. I literally know the education that is happening in those communities from it. Literally know it. And maybe because my brain is the way it is, and not, it is what it is. Everything's like a puzzle to me, and so I put things in places and figure it out after that. And I'm like, oh, that means that. That means this. This fits there. Oh, ooh, 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 ooh. That's me, though. I mean, each his own. I don't know how y'all get through me, but that's just me. It says underemployment. The unemployment rate measures only those actively seeking work but unable to find it. It doesn't consider individuals who are unemployed, meaning they have part-time jobs when they desire full-time employment or are working jobs that are below their skill level. This is particularly relevant for minority communities. Okay. That's why I'm not impressed by 3.5 unemployment rate, Mr. Joe Biden. Poverty and subsidies. Even with a low unemployment rate, certain communities might still experience high levels of poverty. A community I come from, and maybe goats come, from different communities. I don't know. I don't know. Jobs might pay too little to lift families out of poverty, leading to a need for government subsidies and assistance programs. Thus, while people might be employed, they could still be struggling to make ends meet. Yeah. Disenfranchisement and structural barriers. Unemployment rates don't necessarily capture the systemic barriers that certain minority communities face, such as discrimination, lack of access to education and job training, and geographic disparities. These barriers can contribute to persistent unemployment or unemployment in these communities. And when you're talking about geographic disparities, let's take a very rural state like Mississippi, right? Or states that don't have extensive public transportation, right? A person is limited at their job choices, right? Because they may not be able to afford a car. Having a car entails maybe payments, entails paying car insurance, entails upkeep for a car. So those are added expenses that some people may not be able to afford, right? And so a lot of jobs may be out of their way and unable for them to have, right? Health and of the overall economy. A low unemployment rate doesn't guarantee a thriving overall economy. It's possible for an economy to have a low unemployment rate, which I think we have right now, while still lacking in other areas such as economic mobility, social safety nets, and overall quality of life. For a more comprehensive assessment of the well-being of disenfranchised minority communities, it's important to consider a range of indicators beyond just the unemployment rate. These might include income and wage disparities, analyzing income distribution and wage gaps among different demographic groups, poverty rates, examining poverty rates and the effectiveness of social safety net programs in supporting vulnerable communities, education and skill development, assessing access to quality education and job training, which play a critical role in economic mobility, healthcare access, evaluating access to affordable healthcare and its important in its impact on economic well-being. Criminal justice system, considering how interactions with the criminal justice system can impact employment opportunities and economic stability, meaning, if black people have more interactions with the police, resulting in higher, people having higher criminal backgrounds and stuff like that, they also are limited in terms of their employment, right? Social mobility, which is also examining how easy it is for individuals to move up the social economic ladder. In essence, while a low unemployment rate is an important economic indicator, it must be viewed within the broader context of these other factors to get a more accurate understanding of the economic and social health of a disenfranchised minority communities. Look at there, goat. Didn't even have to go to them people Stanford for all that. Okay. To understand all that. Oh man, I'm such an asshole sometimes, y'all. I can't help it though. I just don't like when people do be trying to play with me on some more you need to be an expert, person or whatever, have a degree to speak on certain things. No, I just need to have a brain, right? That operates really well. And I actually have one that is supremely operates. But let's get into Nick Johnson because, like I said, y'all know I fuck with Nick Johnson. I'm always talking about it because I just love his breakdown in so many different ways, and it just helps you examine things and like in a like a deeper capacity, right? That so I'm not, walking around with my head up my ass and just quoting the 3.5 unemployment rate, right? Like I really have a full understanding of like what's going on. So this is actually the second time I've actually recorded this video. So this is, yeah. So I actually kind of know where I want to go. So the great thing about Nick Johnson, I always talk about his videos and stuff like that. I've learned so much watching these videos. If I have to tell you like one thing I spent a lot of time over quarantine doing, I would have to tell you watching Nick Johnson's videos and according to Greg's and stuff like that. They're very educational. They break down a lot of information into, with statistical data. He makes these lists. He's traveled all around the United States. I think the visual of seeing things is extremely important. Don't necessarily think you get that from books and stuff like that. I know for my learning, it's extremely important to have that visual too with the reading. But I think this is actually a really great job because, like I said, it's not just based off his opinion. He's providing you the set so that you understand. So let's see, which one did I go over? This one's America's Worst States for 2019. I want to find the one I recently just watched. Because it was really good. It had this map. And I know it's not this one only because... Let's do this. Oh no, we don't want to do that. Let's go back. One of the things, like I said, he breaks things down into lists. He'll go to these states and then he'll come back, and I'm pretty sure he just takes the footage that he did and he just like really does, like I told you, like A1 work. I tell you guys all the time, there are some people I admire the fuck out of on on YouTube, and he's actually one of them, right? Nick Johnson, I always tell y'all about Papa Lot's channel. He does a great job, like on, great work, right? For amateur, amateur journalists, like, and stuff like that in a way, right? Like, I know they're not journalists. I don't want to take that from the actual journalists, but I just find, these things to be extremely useful in educational. I need to find the one, like, there's one particular one that I saved it. But okay, so this is his channel. Let me go over his channel real quick. So here's some of the lists that he'll come up. America's worst cities, right? America's worst states, America's best states. He also does best. People do hit him up with like and ask him like great places to move and stuff like that because he has all the data and he's able to tell you. America's poorest states. He does that. The top 10 safest states in America. That's interesting. America's 10 most dangerous states. So he does quite a bit of lists. America's dumbest states. America's most boring states. America's most liberal. And America's most conservative. These are interesting ones. America's happiest state. So, he gives you a different, he gives you a lot to, take in terms of like really looking at the country outside of just like where you come from. And then he has these ones, unboxing, where he'll take one state and, he'll travel to different parts of that state and, tell you cool things, the good things, the bad things, and the ugly, you know what I mean? He'll tell you, he's really, he found the town that is hidden in my state that we don't tell nobody about. When I seen Nick Johnson did a video on them people, Springfield, Massachusetts, I said, oh, hell no. Who told him about Springfield? Y'all can't tell me y'all don't have a city or a town in y'all state that you don't want nobody to talk about. Like, you don't want nobody, like, you don't bring it up because this is not good. And Springfield, Massachusetts is one of those for us. Yeah, it's really, really bad out there. I went out there one time, I went there for a funeral. Yeah, it was really one of the most ghettoest hoodie shit I had ever seen. I had never been to a funeral where people are coming in pajamas and, taking pictures with the body in the casket like that like they had a Madame Tussauds wax museum. Yeah, I had that experience in them people Springfield, Massachusetts. So when I say It's a very interesting place. It's a very interesting place. Okay, so don't go there. Don't judge us. We all got that cousin, okay? And Springfield is that cousin, okay? Okay, so one of the places I'm going to take y'all real quick, and then we'll get into that other video. I know I saved it in my other, so I know where to pull it from. But 15 reasons why Appalachia may not exist one day. And the reason why I'm going to show you, he just did this 2 weeks ago because, like I said, I was recently in a clubhouse room and they were just talking about people just maybe, overreacting. It's not that bad. Like, what are you talking about? 3.5 unemployment rate, blah, 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 GDP, and all this other shit. But like I just broke down, the reason I went through that long breakdown on terms of like questioning and thinking about the unemployment rate and how it's so much more to it than just that. It's because I know places like this is really existing. I know people are really living here, right? And this is really going on. And they're not accounted for when people are dismissive or thinking it's just not that bad. So let's go to them people's. Let's go to them people's Appalachia. You know where my folks is from. My folks is from I'm only one generation out of West Virginia. The majority of my family is actually from Alabama and Mississippi. It's just that my great grandparents moved to West Virginia, and that's where my parent met at. But not necessarily like my family hails from West Virginia. They actually hail from Alabama and Mississippi. Okay, so 15 reasons Appalachia may not exist one day. Let's get into that.
Through the
Now I just gotta warn y'all, this is really hard to look at. Like I don't want you guys to think that there's no enjoyment. These are fellow Americans that are living like this, right? And it kind of bothers me, right? It bothers me that we live in this country that acts like it's so great, and it has done nothing to help the people that are really, really struggling, right? And we act like they don't need all this help. As you know, my state just recently in Massachusetts, $48 million a month we are spending to aid illegal immigrants, right? I'd give all that money to these people in these states right here. That's how I feel. As a fellow American, that money should be going to these states. That's literally how I feel. We have that to give. We have excess money like that in Massachusetts. Any state has access. In New York, you have access money like that for hotels and shit for motherfuckers complaining about where they sleeping at, accommodations that are being made for them. No, no, no. I'd rather send it to the people in Appalachia. That's just literally how I feel. If I'm going to take tax money and spend it on anybody, I'd rather spend it on these people. I'd rather spend it on our vets and all those people. Yes, most definitely. Yep. I sure do. I'd rather be spending it on sending people who can make ends meet monthly checks to survive because I understand we have gutted our country out in terms of opportunities for a lot of these people. It's never coming back. I know coal, my folks in West Virginia know coal is never coming back like it used to be. We get it.
West Virginia and Tennessee. This part of the country is the poorest, most drug-addicted region in the country. The people who live here have been here for a long time, and most of them will never leave. They've seen the highs and lows of life, just like you and I have. But the ups and downs for these people have been some really tough ones. As you can tell, most of them are in a low right now. Really, really low.
We gonna mute music because we don't know. I don't know the highs and lows of Appalachian Mountain. This is 2023. So when people are talking, when you hear individuals making it seem like it's not that bad, and they just want to totally be dismissive of people in terms of, these, they're just not skilled workers, that they just can't make it in today's economy and all this other stuff. So whose government isn't it our government responsible for that? They're the ones that allowed for all these corporations and all these manufacturing jobs to go overseas, not replacing, knowing damn well that these communities didn't have an education system in place to keep up with where the country was going. So yes, they are responsible for it. You think they got great schools in this part of the country?
It's kind of a small county on the Tennessee state line. I began the trip in McCreary County, Kentucky. It's kind of a small county on the Tennessee state line. It's in southeastern Kentucky. If you know anything about Kentucky, you know this side of the state has some of the worst conditions in the United States. There's only 18,000 people in this entire county. The population's going down fast. A lot of these people are very poor. Many are unhealthy. There just aren't a lot of good jobs here since the coal industry left. And whatever companies are left have a hard time finding people who can even pass a drug test.
And this is what I hate. Like, I hate this whole, if you voted for Joe Biden, you owe me gas money. Like, Joe Biden has nothing to do with the gas. Like, I hate, like, when, like, and it's so sad because, again, everybody's always looking for somebody to blame for, like, their, current situations and stuff like that. But that's not it. And, it's just really, really, really sad. The gas was high when Trump was in office too, right? Shit wasn't right. This town, this city don't just start looking like this under Joe Biden. And so I'm never going to pile on like one candidate over the other more in that type of way. This shit is fucked up because America is choosing to not address it. So that's Americans, that's Republicans, that's Democrat, that's, I don't care, that's everybody. So I hate to even think about just like trying to put it on one person in that way.
Back here and came across a rooster farm. The guy who owns the land raises these cocks and fights them. I had never seen that before. A real rooster fighting farm and all, way out in the middle of backwoods Kentucky. The guy who runs the place has lived out here forever, and he talked to me.
But you just do the best you can every day, Just take it with a grain of salt. Hope you do good. And that's just it.
Yeah.
So
here's what the only diner in the county looks like. A place called the Dairy Bar. I actually had the sheriff called on me when I was here because the crummy hotel I was staying at threw me out when I borrowed a blanket from a nearby room. The sheriff told me there's drug problems here all the time, just about every night, and he apologized to me for being thrown into the lot with the junkies. I had to go to a nearby county because there just wasn't another hotel in town. You just have to assume that everybody's on drugs, I guess, around here. Small towns like this might not have a lot going on, but they're cheap. You might be bored. I'm sure they are too at times.
Morgantown, West Virginia. I haven't been to Morgantown, West Virginia. My family lives more in like Gary and the Welch area, which is kind of deeper down. I don't know how to explain it. It's deeper down. It's deeper towards the southern border. Like if you were gonna go towards the southern border of West Virginia, it's more down in there, really in the coal mines itself. And like if you go there, like you don't have good reception and stuff like that. So just imagine, like if we're talking about education and we're talking about access to like the internet and all the other stuff, like what are we talking about? Like we know certain shit is not happening Like, for real, for real. But West Virginia is such a beautiful state. I want to tell you guys that. Like, the last time we went, my niece, I think at the time, she was like, I don't know, like 3 years old. And she's like, those mountains are enormous. And she was like 3 or 4 years old talking like that. I love her. She's so amazing. But a beautiful, and when I tell you one of the most beautiful states in America, like that I've seen, right? I've witnessed, like it's just absolutely beautiful. It was the first time like I've seen people getting water out the side of a mountain, y'all. So I don't know, I love it. But I don't live there either, right? So that's something completely different, right? Visiting somewhere is something completely different than having to live there, right? Because I wouldn't live there at all. My mama owned a house and everything down there. Ain't nobody living down. She got land down there. Anybody? I'm not moving back to West Virginia. I'm a city girl.
4 days into the trip, I made my way into West Virginia. My first stop was Morgantown. It's one of the largest cities here, but there's only 50,000 or so people in town. The reason I spent a few days here is because this is the most liberal place in the most conservative state. Seems like most of West Virginia isn't going to vote liberal ever again. But a majority of the people in Morgantown are the ones leading the way with the state's progressivism. This is home to the only really big university in the state. All of this is very unique for West Virginia. So I just drove around here and talked to people, see what it was like. Here's what the conservative part of town looks like. It's very poor. I think this is where a lot of the liberals live. Seems like this side of town's doing much better, if you ask me. Homelessness is a big deal here, but from what I hear, it's mostly due to addiction. The housing costs in this state are very reasonable. How do you feel about the way the U.S. is headed right now?
I have mixed emotions about it. I feel like some things are going in the right way, but some things aren't. Yeah.
What's going the right way?
I don't know. I can't think of it right now.
What's going the wrong way?
Everything in West
The
Virginia.
University of West Virginia, it's a nice campus. A welcome relief from the dreary doldrums you see in this part of the land. The capital of West Virginia is Charleston. This was once a very important city, filled with rich oilmen and investors and decision makers. But like the rest of the region, the good days are far behind. They've lost 40,000 people over the last 60 years, and there aren't a lot of signs the decline here is going to turn around. It's the same thing here you see all over West Virginia. Poverty, drugs, thefts. A lot of Charleston's so run down, even if families are thinking about moving here, there just aren't a lot of neighborhoods for them to settle in.
Okay, so that's a good number that I want to focus on it for a second. 40,000 people the last 60 years have left this area. Part of it, like he said, it was a booming economy. I've watched some documentaries and some stuff that actually showed West Virginia back in the day in terms of like when it did not look like this, when it had coal. This is not me advocating for bringing back coal, because I do understand its its impact on the climate and all the other stuff. But I just want to kind of highlight when certain industries leave, when businesses leave, what happens to the overall community that around it, right? Because it supports the communities, right? So this is what it starts to look like. Now, this is in West Virginia, but this is something that I could take you to another video that shows me the same exact thing in Gary, Indiana, right? And I mean all over certain states and countries and stuff like that. I'm sorry, certain states, the same exact thing there, right? So we're going to leave this video because, like I said, I don't want this to be too long. We're already 41 minutes in. All right, so I finished off showing you guys the West Virginia and Kentucky, that part of Appalachia, which is an area that is close to the East Coast. It encompasses all of West Virginia. It's part of lower Pennsylvania. It's part of the left corridors of North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia. It's the top east corridor of Georgia. Where else it encompasses that? It's the lower part of Ohio, West Virginia, crossing over to Ohio. And that's all I can think of right now. But it's really, that's just essentially what it is. I hope I said Kentucky, Tennessee. Yep, that's Appalachia, right? And I think I wanted to show you this additional video because I think when it comes to Appalachia, I didn't show you nothing that I don't think people think that they've already heard before, to be completely honest with you. I think everybody associates the poor, the uneducated, whatever, all anything white degenerate related, to be completely honest, is already associated with the Appalachian Mountains, like, hillbillies and all the other stuff. So, Mountain Dew teeth. I've seen documentaries and stuff that talked about that. I've seen, when they really do discuss welfare fraud, it's really in the Appalachian area in terms of, like, you know what I mean? A lot of people in them SNAP benefits in that area, no subsidies. This is not a shade, but this is just me being honest. When people, wrongfully say that Black Americans or Black people are the ones getting all the welfare and getting all the SNAP benefits, when I know for damn sure, it's not us overwhelmingly, collecting the subsidies, right? With that being said, I really wanted to show you guys this video because it's the 10 worst states in America. And I thought it was really surprising because I think because of association and visual association, that a lot of times in America, I think we just associate, like, it has to be awful to live in Chicago, right? Because of the violence, right? Or it has to be awful to live in, Philadelphia because of the images that are coming out there with areas of just like, all the drug users walking around like zombies, right? And it's so weird because it's the picking and choosing that of wanting to show that type of like what's going on. Because living in Boston, Massachusetts, we have an area on Mass Ave that's just like them people's Philadelphia. I don't know. It seems like it's more areas in Philadelphia, like. For us, though, it's just one specific area where we see all this. We see individuals like you see coming out of Philadelphia looking like zombies and stuff like that. But the media doesn't pick that up, right? And I think, if I have to guess, that there's more than just, my state that looks like that in certain parts, right? But I think because, like I said, the association with the visuals, right, that is always portrayed on the media. I think there's just a lot of more people. I'm thinking when you think about like the worst states to live, people will probably say somewhere like, San Francisco, the Bay Area, Los Angeles, because of Skid Row, that association, or New York, you know what I mean? Currently what's going on there, all the robbings and just the rise in violence and stuff like that, right? So certain cities and states and stuff get, labeled. And I think it gives Americans a false sense of like, a false sense of an idea that is just in these areas, and outside of these areas it's just great everywhere, and that's just not that. I think this video gives you a different way of looking at it. It'll talk about like healthcare, it'll talk about education, it'll talk about how many college graduates are in certain cities and states, and it'll talk about the wage disparities. It talks about like how happy people are living where they're at. So it's just a further breakdown. And then I think you'll just be surprised about the states that do show up, right? I think when we think about Las Vegas, we don't think about Las Vegas being an awful place to live because we're so blinded by the lights and stuff of the casinos and the big hotels. And we just think, oh, that has to be enough economy there to support that entire state. And I know that state is doing well. Everyone wants to go to Las Vegas, right? And that's just not the case. And I think when you see it in this type of breakdown, you'll understand. So here we go now. All right, so let's get into it.
So many awesome places to live and explore. There's some really amazing places in our fine country where people are friendly, lots of people have good jobs, and you couldn't find trouble even if you tried. In some parts of America, you just might think you're in heaven. And no, I'm not talking about the Golden Corral buffet either. And then there's the bad side of America. They are not like heaven in many places. You've probably been there before, or you live there now. These are the places where people are broke, crime is really high, and you can't find as much to do for fun. In these areas, things are just downright crummy. Today, we're going to look at the states that are downright lousy to live in, at least for the most part. And we're going to use statistics to do the rankings for us. So while many of you may not agree with the choices we make, you can't disagree with the methodology. If you live in a state we're about to talk about, don't hang your head. At least you don't live in North Korea. So join us on our janky journey across America's worst states for 2019. We begin this terrible trip through America in the state of Nevada. Whoa, 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 Nevada, don't get all bent out of shape. Why is Nevada so second rate? First off, Nevada has the nation's 4th highest violent rate in the country. Part of that might be due to the state's poor worker pool. Outside of Vegas, there are
Okay, so that's important. Fourth highest violent rate in America, right? But again, like I said, because of visual representation and because of what media chooses to concentrate on, these are not the sexy stories that make, the nightly news or CNN that often, right? Unless there's something really big that comes out of there, right? But look where it falls fourth, right? So that's why I say sometimes it's really get into statistics in a way that people aren't being manipulative with them, or people are just choosing, not to. People are just choosing to show their, show the cities that get the most attention.
There aren't many jobs or employees. In fact, Nevada has America's 2nd highest unemployment rate and our nation's 6th least number of college graduates. And to top it off, Nevada has the highest rate of...
Who would have thought they had the least amount of college graduates in Las Vegas, Nevada? Right? Like, you would have never associated with that. I literally think we just literally have made a whole bunch of assumptions of like what shows up in certain demographics. We just like, Las Vegas in Nevada is not known to be a very black city. I'm gonna call it out for what it is. It's very white. A lot of these states that he go to are very white towns, right? Or very white states, right? And so we're always saying that, or I think there's an assumption, even on the black side of things, there's an assumption that when we think about, these small towns and these lesser known cities and stuff, or lesser known visited cities, that we're automatically assuming that they are educated. We're automatically assuming they're getting better education than us. Right? And for me, this just further supports my believing if there's something that's going to happen in this country in terms of people rebelling and all this other stuff, it's going to be around class, right? Socioeconomic, situations. But I just don't think it's going to be about race because, again, what you see and what Nick Johnson does in these videos, he really kind of shows you not just one race is hurting here. Right? It's just disproportionately shows up in the black community because we're a smaller community than the majority, which is the white community, right? And so when you see it when you see that we have such high numbers within our community, and we're the smaller, it just automatically gets more attention. And it's the same way in terms of the stats when you talk about how we show up in terms of like in jails and stuff like that, right? We only make 14% of this country, but we make over, I think it says, if I can recall it, I think we make up over 50% of the jail population. And that's a lot. So think of it that way in terms of like when you're thinking about, poverty, right? We don't represent half of this country, but more than likely we could potentially, within the black community, we could have poverty levels above 50%, right? So that's what makes it so astonishing. So yeah, we got to start talking about stats in like ways that are like real. Some people, like I said, just throw them out. Remember I said I wanted to do this video because of that stat that said, oh, this is the best economy in a while and we have the lowest unemployment rate and da 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 da. And then let's get to the gristle of it. Let's get to the bone of it. Let's see what that really looks like.
Domestic violence by men against women in all of the U.S. Now let's be fair and look at the bright side of living in Nevada. Well, for starters, you could go and watch
That domestic domestic violence one is interesting. So what are we saying? Husbands are losing their money at the casino and going home and being angry and taking it out on their wives. I'm confused. What is going on? Is higher numbers of prostitution and pimp shit? Like, I don't know. That's a weird statistic, to highlight for that state. Just weird. But I mean, if it's as miserable as, least college educated, that means, jobs and, what people are making, right? They said that fourth overall in terms of employed. Yeah, that means people are miserable, right? That could possibly mean a lot of husbands are miserable and taking it out on their wives. And so that results in, high domestic violence numbers, right? That results in overall, like, how happy is the people who live in this state, right?
Watch Britney and Gaga every night if you wanted to. That's cool. And you don't have to pay income tax in Nevada. Instead, the state pays for all of this with gambling money. 71% of Nevada's state budget comes from people like you and me. And if you own a business in Nevada, you don't have to pay corporate tax either. That means you can cook the books all you want.
I went to Old Las Vegas. That's what that is that you just seen there. That's called Old Las Vegas when I went to Vegas. It was fun. I literally went to Vegas by myself. Was it the one I did for my birthday? No. I went to that year, which was a really interesting year. Very introspective year and birthday for me. I really appreciate that. I went to Houston, Texas for my birthday, and I think a month later, in July, I went to Las Vegas, and I absolutely positively loved traveling and did both of those trips by myself. Houston this was during the pandemic, and I really enjoyed going to Vegas during the pandemic because I was like, it was so slowed down, and there weren't long lines at places and stuff. So I actually really enjoyed that experience. Now, when I go back, I know, of course, everything is open now, so it's going to be a different experience. But I will say, it being slowed down and not a lot of people there, I actually really kind of enjoyed it. So if I ever get the opportunity to like go somewhere, like if you ever get the opportunity to go somewhere where time slows down, and you kind of get to experience it without all the craziness, take it. I'm trying to think of like where else I'd want to go, like if it wasn't so crazy, like, you know what I mean, because of all the, everyone outside. Maybe Cali, maybe Hollywood, you know what I mean, because I heard their traffic is crazy. But I just know Vegas was dope because nobody was there.
And no one will ever know. Not to be outdone, however, Arizona is a really suspect place to live too. Sure, we're well aware that places like Sedona, Prescott, Chandler, and Gilbert are awesome places to visit and live, and there's a lot of pretty deserts and lots of space. I get it. Fact is, though, there are far much better places to call home. Statistically, Arizona has a lot to boast about. The Copper State ranks in the bottom 10 in 5 different categories, folks. Total crime, including violent and property crimes, is 8th highest, and the number of people without health insurance is 10th. Alcoholism is a big deal here. Booze poisoned the 4th highest number of drinkers in America in Arizona. And if you like Mexican food, well, your choices are limited to the greater Phoenix area. So if you're craving a
So he just gave you a whole bunch of information right there in terms of like violent crimes and break-ins and all types of health insurance. These are all things that go towards mental health and how excited people may be or how happy people may be living there. So yeah, these are extremely important. But again, you're fed those same states, Philly, New York, LA, are the worst states to live in.
Look at that thing. For the first time on our crummy cruise through America, we head out east, where we take a pit stop in the very friendly and mostly beautiful state of Tennessee. But beauty is only skin deep in many parts of the volunteer state. Incomes are the 8th lowest in America, which means lots of Tennesseans are living in poverty, and many struggle to find decent jobs outside of the booming capital of Nashville. Part of that problem is due to a population that ranks in the bottom 10 for education. Tennessee is tops in the nation for numbers.
Bottom 10th in education. At this point, y'all should just be moving to where there's good education at if you want to give your children a fighting chance in this new world we're moving in, right? Like we have a government that's not educating its population to keep up with technology, right? So essentially, we're in this perpetual loop of being undereducated, and being uneducated with the inability, meaning well, being uneducated, and that resulting with the inability to be able to get high paying jobs, like for real. And so the other thing that Nick Johnson does, he, like I said, he does lists. He composes lists to tell you the best places to move, with best opportunities. He'll highlight the states that have, great education, and what towns and cities you should look to, right? And he does, I think, a consultation. Like if you reach out to him and you are looking to move, and you want him to compile a list of different states, and I guess, different criterias of what you're interested in, he would be able to provide you that information. So, yeah, it's just like really sad.
Of immunized residents, which is good or bad depending on if you're an anti-vaxxer. But most importantly, in Tennessee, crime is remarkably bad.
Did you know Tennessee has the nation's third highest violent rate?
Thanks, Mappy. Good point. And I'll add that Memphis in particular is a real mess. It consistently ranks as one of the most destitute, dangerous dives in the country. But have you ever had a good
I'm gonna actually probably probably not no time soon, probably next month or so. I'm gonna probably do another video, one of these videos. It's much shorter, where I pick one where he just picks a state, and I probably will pick Memphis because I was astonished. Well, probably Memphis and Baton Rouge. I was astonished by Memphis, and I was really, really astonished by Memphis and the way Memphis looks, and I thought it was extremely sad, to think that I live in this country, and it boasts about being the number one, and of course that unemployment rate and all this other stuff, and just to see the conditions in which people are living and coming from was really, really, really bad. Like especially Baton Rouge, that shit. Oh my God, I can't even believe it. But I also want you guys to think about some things, right? In terms of like what we hear that does make the headlines. Y'all know what happened with Young Dolph in Tennessee and in Memphis, Tennessee, and how that went down in broad daylight. And it's basically it's going down like that, like for real, for real. Like I've seen countless videos of like broad daylight shootouts and stuff like that. I remember when Nick Johnson did go to Memphis, he talked about having to go ride through the city at like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning. He spoke to a retired, or I think the person may have been out on disability, police officers. He did a great job of doing that. And then think about who came out of those cities and what we hear in terms of like the bullshit they be on. Young Dolph, got murdered. It's alleged that he was set up, and the craziness behind that. Like maybe one day I will do a video where I do talk about Young Dolph's death, because it's quite sad. Quite sad, and I'm not gonna try to paint Young Dolph as some victim because he just really wasn't. And I know, as much as it sucks to say that because he's not alive, right? Everybody played a part. But that comes out of Tennessee, right? And that comes out of Memphis, Tennessee. But then you got to think about Mr. Bootsy coming out of Baton Rouge, right? And seeing Baton Rouge and seeing what goes on. And I think a lot of what I think I'm trying to say is that we are looking at people in terms of products of their environment, right? Black Youngster, Moneybagg Yo Gotti, and stuff like that. You have Bootsy, and you have NBA Youngboy coming out of them people's Shreve Point in Baton Rouge. And I think, no, I'm sorry, I think NBA Youngboy is out of Baton Rouge too. And yeah, you get to see like, okay, this is what you're producing, right? We know Bootsy because he's famous. We know all those people from Memphis because they're famous. But there's so many men like them and who aren't famous that are in these cities, and they are is tearing it the fuck up. Even the influence of NBA YoungBoy, I forgot whose video I was watching. And when I tell you, when you talk about the damage of what like hip hop is doing in our communities, just to see the association and the people that NBA young boys associated with, right, locally in these cities. And I mean, these niggas are getting in their cars, going to different cities, pulling off hits and all types of shit. Like, it is truly, truly going down. There's some people who haven't made it, like, in terms of rappers, so mainstream that if you were just like a nerd like me and you're just watching a whole bunch of shit, you run past you come across some shit, you're like, oh my god, y'all really out here. Because you can be a rapper like on the drill scene and really be making money out here because you have a local following. Niggas come to your shows locally, they fuck with your merch, they watch your videos on YouTube, so you making money off that, so you can have a little buzz about yourself, right? But with that being said, with that little buzz, y'all gotta understand, like, the content of what they're rapping about is about shooting, it's about killing, it's about putting that work in these streets, and that is literally going down, right? So that's why sometimes when I hear people talk about and try to blame the labels, I'm like, man, you don't know what you're talking about. There's a lot of famous local niggas who ain't signed to these major labels and they still tearing up these cities, right? So, you know, the labels do play a part because, of course, those local ones are aspiring. But I'm just saying, they still getting money out here, right? There's an system within their own state that holds them down in terms of, in different ways. But whatever. Save that for another day. We in South Carolina, and listen, y'all, listen. Linda, listen, it's a lot. These states be looking all beautiful. You be watching college football, and you be watching, University of South Carolina, and everything be looking beautiful on these campuses. And baby, this shit is crazy.
Here, the beach communities are some of the best on the East Coast, where people come from all around the world to play golf and vacation. Then there's the rest of South Carolina, which is pretty much tobacco, cotton, and cornfields, and very poor. Surprisingly, South Carolina has the 4th worst crime in the nation. Well, not surprising for South Carolinians. You have about a 1 in 70 chance of being the victim of a property crime for every year you spend in the Palmetto State. South Carolina is also the 4th worst place in America for online dating. So if you're looking for love here, swipe at your own risk. Other factors? High poverty rates, and America's 9th lowest income levels. This state ranks 1st for number of mobile home parks per capita too, which is really bad news during hurricane season. But there's reasons to be proud of living in South Carolina. Clemson won the college football title 2 of the past 3 years. Congrats to the Tigers. But what really makes South Carolina great is the number of amazing insects this state boasts. You can stand outside on a summer night and at any time dozens, if not hundreds, of curious bugs will come right up to you. Who lives in our next worst state in America in 2019? That would be our good friends in Oklahoma. Out in Oklahoma's town of El Reno, things couldn't be any worse than today.
A lot of people don't believe us.
We begin Oklahoma. First off, this state ranks the 4th lowest in number of people with medical insurance. Considering that 43% of Okies carry guns, it might be surprising that this state has America's 12th highest property crime rate. Robbers must just like taking their chances here. Now, while many people might say they love the cost of living in Oklahoma, the fact that this state has America's 4th lowest home values is a sign that there's not a lot of desire to live here, plain and simple. Another interesting fact, Oklahoma has the most women in their prison system than any other state. Some tough broads in the Sooner State. And to top it off, Oklahomans eat the least number of fruits and veggies of anywhere else.
For variety and vitamins and feeling rooty toot, eat a veg, a bread, a milk, a cheese, a bean, a meat, a fruit.
Did you know parking meters and voicemail were both invented in Oklahoma?
Thanks, Mappy. But no one likes either parking meters or voicemail.
Hey!
Now, Oklahomans aren't all gun-toting cowboys driving around their pickup trucks. Oklahomans are known for being awful friendly folk, who love living in wide open spaces, in trailer parks. No, that's not fair. There's actually a decent number of cities with a lot to do in Oklahoma. For instance, every year, Beaver, Oklahoma hosts the cow poop throwing national championships. And if you don't like watching cow poop throwing, you're not a true American, pal. Not so sweet home Alabama. We begin our journey southward, where we'll remain for just about the entire rest of our tour. We start in the state of Alabama, the fourth poorest place in the nation. While not having money doesn't necessarily mean a place is lousy, having a lot of crime does. Alabama ranks 9th for total number of crimes committed each year. In terms of opportunities, there aren't many. At 7%, Alabama has the nation's 7th highest people out of work. Across the board, there's not actually a single category where Alabama excels. Now on paper, Alabama may not have Southern charm, but there's a lot here that meets the eye. There's a low cost of living here and a ton of outdoors to explore, where you can learn how to get unstuck from the mud with all your redneck buddies. Did you know more people go to church in Alabama than anywhere else? Okay. It's also true that more people die of strokes in Alabama than any other state too. Oh man. For now, we're gonna leap over Mississippi and peel back the layers on our next bad state, Louisiana. Don't worry, Mississippi, we haven't forgotten about you. Folks in Louisiana are really singing the blues these days. That's because things aren't going so well for many of them. It's a mess down here, to be honest. Louisiana ranks in the bottom 10 in 8 of 11 categories we measured. It's 3rd in crime, 9th in uninsured residents, 3rd in poverty, 6th in income levels, and Louisianans are the 5th least educated people in America. Factor in the worst sales tax structure and some of the high
5th least educated, crime, no health insurance, jobs, wage disparity. Again, every day we're hearing about New York, Chicago, LA. We're not hearing about these cities and towns. Okay? So, like I said, I just think that we're being rocked to sleep to think things are better than what they really are. Yeah, and we need to call our government out. You guys need to get more on your senators and your house, your House of Representative people, right? Making sure that they are securing funds for your states and they are bringing opportunities, and like really get on your governors and even your local representatives' asses, right? I think the problem is the inactiveness of these communities that are affected, and that are not, not involved with the politics, right? We're having low voter turnout locally, right? But then we want to complain to the federal government, but y'all don't want to hold your local representatives responsible. You don't even know a lot of times who are your representatives in terms of your senators and your House of Representatives. Are you calling? Are you writing letters, right? Because you can't possibly be happy with what's going on in your state. Right? And if they feel like people are being, holding them accountable, they work for us, right? I think we're getting to the point where I think we were getting to the point where we were glamorizing them like Hollywood stars and shit like that, right? And not expecting anything to be done in our cities and states. This is really, really bad. And the areas that are, and I can't even make it a black and white thing because, everybody just has to get more civically involved. That's just what it is. Like everyone. These are states like Arizona, Nevada that he has been into, Oklahoma. These aren't predominantly black cities or black states, right? So white people too, what are you doing, to hold your representatives accountable? Shout out Elizabeth Warren, though, and them people's Massachusetts. Woody woo!
highest local sales taxes in the entire country, and it's woo-wee hard to make ends meet here. Now, before you get all down on Louisiana, you should know that the Pelican State is actually full of some really friendly and giving people. The Cajun Navy's a bright spot here. Whenever something goes wrong in Louisiana, you can bet the first people on the scene will be neighbors and strangers. Plus, there's crawfish everywhere here. You can get crawfish jello, crawfish beer, crawfish peanut butter, crawfish cereal, crawfish ice cream, crawfish spice lattes. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. Mississippi's a real work in progress. This really pretty state ranks lowest in 5 categories, including college graduates, income levels, home prices, and jobs. It's also a very racist place to live as well. The education system in Mississippi is pretty lousy. Did you know 32% of the population over the age of 18 here can't even spell the state's name? Much of
All right, y'all. So that's an extremely important, stat to really pay attention. 32% of Mississippians do not know how to spell their state, and that's pretty ridiculous, okay? Like, nobody taught y'all, the little song MISSISSIPPI. And then, Massachusetts is actually one of those other states that are actually, I think Mississippi and Massachusetts probably the 2 hardest states to spell. I can't think of any other state that gives me problems with spelling it. But yeah, Massachusetts and Mississippi probably the toughest too. But for it to be your state and you don't know how to spell it, that's crazy. That is crazy. I don't know if nobody taught you how to break down words or anything like that. I know for Massachusetts, MASSACHUSETTS. And it actually, if you look at Massachusetts, it actually is spelled exactly the same way it sounds. You just have to separate it. True, CHUSSETTS. Massachusetts. So I don't know. Like, that shit is weird and crazy. But again, there's a whole lot of assumptions that are made about the fact of the matter is we associate, thinking that white people are getting this way better education than we are. And that's not the case. Not the case.
Mississippi also has a big shortage of medical doctors too. This state has the nation's highest rates for women dying of heart disease and the nation's highest obesity rate. That means there's some pretty big boys in Mississippi.
And Bob's Big Boy, we love good food just like you do.
Now, people in Mississippi are pretty proud to be from Mississippi, and they admit their state has flaws, but they love it nonetheless. We don't have to go too far to visit our second worst place to live in America, Arkansas. Arkansas is not last in a number of categories like Mississippi is, but it's far worse off in more of them overall. They're just about as poor as folks in Mississippi, but it's even more dangerous in Arkansas. And like other southern states on our list, it's a poor place with little opportunity. Although, to be fair, some of the gunshots that ring out in Arkansas every day may not be due to crime. Bright spots here. For fun, you could join an outhouse racing league or join in on some spontaneous hog calls. And if you're into camo, you'd fit right in. Now, what's interesting about Arkansas is that the natural state ranked 10th in the nation for happiest states, according to a national poll. So, statistics aside, people here don't really seem to care a lick. Which of our fine American states is the worst place you can live? We're looking at you, New Mexico. First off, New Mexico sees more break-ins, armed robbery, and theft than anywhere else. There's a saying here.
Break-ins, armed robbery, and thefts in New Mexico, right? You did not associate any of that with New Mexico like that. You just didn't. And if you out there saying you did, use a damn lie. You didn't. You associated all of that shit with what is being reported coming out of Atlanta, what's being reported coming out of Chicago, what's being reported, when we see these, flash mobs of all these kids, running in and looting stores and stuff like that. People walking into restaurants in California, walking up to patrons and robbing them while they eat their dinner. That's what you're seeing. You're seeing the blackface. You're seeing it being black-faced, right? That's what media is doing. And that's the deceptiveness. That's the deceptiveness of it, right? And I know some people who are really in media who try to do a good job and report the news. Well, I have to say bullshit, because if you are heavily painting the impression that things are so much worse in certain communities by a certain group of people, when numbers say that that's just not the case. Yeah, you're fooling the people. You're lying to the people.
If it's not bolted down, somebody's going to take it, unless you put a sign on it that says free. Only 2/3 of kids here finish high school, so their education system suffers year after year. There's a huge...
2/3. 2/3 of people finish high school. I don't even like, and again, even when you talk about like when they talk about who's being undereducated and all this other stuff, again, that's also being black faced, right? To make it seem as though that's majority of that is black people. I don't know no niggas in New Mexico. I don't even know no famous niggas that done came out of New Mexico. That's not to say they don't exist, but where they at? Right? This is examples of blackfacing issues. Putting it all on one community, making it seem as if though only one community is showing up degeneratively, right? And as much as I get on my own community about, some of our degenerative behavior, but just sitting here looking at this is a clear indicator y'all more degenerate than us. And no, this is not the degenerative Olympics, but I'm just talking about the overrepresentation of it appearing as if though black people are the only ones showing up like this, and that's just not the fucking case. Fuck is going on in New Mexico? Like, for real.
Wealth gap in New Mexico, and wages are really low, meaning there's not a lot of opportunities. Alcohol might as well be running through the taps in the houses here with the number of DWI arrests and deaths that happen in New Mexico every year. New Mexico's also lowest ranked in the country for child well-being too. When you look at the numbers overall, New Mexico ranks toward the bottom in just about every statistical category you can measure. Are there any good things about living in New Mexico? Probably, but we're out of time.
Well, technically...
Shut up, Mappy. There you go. That's the tour. Here's the actual map to prove we did the data. The darker the red, the worse. The darker the blue, the better. And no, this has...
And this map is extremely interesting. I want to talk about this map a little bit, only because I think it kind of highlights a little bit of a contradiction in terms of Nick Johnson. I fuck with you, but I do pick up on your, your feelings towards, the Democrats, and of course your feelings towards Joe Biden, and looking at Wilmington and blaming, blaming, liberal, Democrats that have been voted into office for why certain things exist in certain states. And I think this map just really kind of contradicts all of that, right? When you start looking at the reddest part of this map, it's all Republican and conservative controlled states, right? I think even if you're looking at, like, let's take Georgia for instance, right? Of course it has a mayor that is black, and of course they are Democrats in Atlanta. I'm sorry, of course they're Democrats, but at the same time the rest of the state, like, one city doesn't turn a state red like that. The darkest of the red, right? Texas has always been red, right? Controlled, right? So I don't know. I think that kind of, that's why I made a point to say when this video was in Kentucky, trying to blame Joe Biden for something that seems to, predates him, that seems to be historical at this point in terms of like consistent problems, right? And if you look at the states that do have blue leadership in terms of like our senators and our House of Representatives are majority Democrats, they're actually blue states. That's the mind fuck, y'all. That's the mind fuck. And this is not me caping for Democrats, because I'm most definitely independent. I'm not someone who's going to take sides for any of these parties. But that's the mind fuck. This map says something completely different. It map says actually the states that are doing the best are actually led by the Democrats. And granted, this is 2019, even though it's 2023, I don't think too much has changed. I mean, I think probably, you see how light blue California is, and might be looking a little tannish right now. But outside of that, like, I don't believe nothing has changed much. But pay attention to the manipulation, and I think this map is a great example of like what that manipulation looks like, right? That's why I jumped in clubhouse rooms to go on stages when you're talking about, should we blame the Democrats for, what we see in some of these urban cities and in the increase in violence? Well, if you're going to blame them, so who the fuck they blaming in these red ass, diehard blood red colored ass states down here? Someone ain't right. Somebody's lying, right? Somebody is lying. All right, that's all I got to say about that. I'm gonna go ahead and get on out of here. On that note, y'all know how we do it here. We keep it bougie as F. We keep it posh as F. We keep it black as F. Y'all keep being blessed as F. Kiss, 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 kiss. And don't you forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.